From the moment President Trump took office, he's used his position to benefit himself rather than our country. He's trampled the rule of law, trying to weaponize our Justice Department to attack his enemies and protect his friends. Rather than standing up to Vladimir Putin, he fawns over a dictator who is still trying to interfere in our elections. He's even trying to sabotage our postal service to keep people from being able to vote. His constant attacks on the FBI, the free press, inspectors general, federal judges, they all have one purpose: to remove any check on his abuse of power.
Former acting Attorney General Sally Yates speaking last night during the Democratic National Convention. And Sally joins us now. It's great to have you on the show. I want to talk to you about Joe Biden. But first, I want to develop on the point that we showed you making last night and ask you for your reaction to what you've seen or heard so far on this bipartisan Senate Intel report.
Well, I think that this report establishes the same thing that the Mueller report did and the same thing that our intel community had found before, but they've done it in even greater detail now. And that is that the Russians were interfering in our election to try to assist Donald Trump. Essentially, Vladimir Putin was trying to pick our president. And the even more frightening thing, I think, is that they're still up to it. They're still working now in this election.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about they've done it in greater detail. There are several in the Trump administration who many are concerned, sort of joined in what appeared to be multiple corrupt practices. If you were Attorney General during the time that the Mueller report was released, how would you have handled it compared to the way Bill Barr did?
Well, look, I'm not going to go through and try to second guess everything there, but I will say this, is that I think it was really important when the Mueller report was issued for that report to be characterized accurately. And when that 4-page summary came out, that certainly was misleading in many ways as to what the final conclusions were of that report. It seems that that was the beginning of rewriting history in terms of what actually happened between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And so, to me, Bob Mueller's work should have spoken for itself.
Attorney General Yates, it's Willie Geist. Great to have you on with us this morning. You obviously had some inside knowledge of investigations into Michael Flynn. You were there in that meeting in the Oval Office on January the 5th, 2017. You were very familiar with the details of Russia's interference in the 2016 election. So I'm wondering if there was anything in yesterday's Senate Intel report that surprised you. Did you learn something new from what the Senate unearthed in its 3-year investigation?
Well, I'll confess that I have not yet read the full 1,000-page Senate report. I've read media accounts of it and some excerpts of it, but I haven't read the whole thing. But what they have done is, look, I left at the beginning of the Trump administration. There was a lot more information that came to light after that, after I left government. And certainly the specifics with respect to Paul Manafort's interactions with a Russian intelligence officer, that ought to, give a chill down the spine to everyone that was happening with the campaign manager of a presidential campaign and a Russian intelligence officer.
You spoke last night about the president saying he has bankrupted our country's moral authority. What do you mean specifically by that? What does that look like inside the Justice Department, for example?
Yeah, when I think about what's happened at the Justice Department, more than the impact on any one specific case, to me, the most troubling aspect of this is what it does to the public's trust in the equal application of the law. What is concerning is that people will begin to believe that the rules don't apply equally to everyone, and that if you are close to the president or close to someone in power, that you get special treatment. And, you can look to things like the Roger Stone situation or Mike Flynn or others. And then also this very concept that if you cross the president, that folks will go after you. I mean, that's just the antithesis of what the rule of law is. And frankly, it's the antithesis of how the department has operated, at least since Watergate.
Sally, it's Claire McCaskill. First, congratulations on the vindication by Tom Cotton and John Cornyn that the investigations into Carter Page and into the circumstances surrounding this Russian asset in Trump's campaign was called for. It was an appropriate investigation, unlike what the president has said. But I have a question for you. How many years were you in the Department of Justice?
27, but who's counting?
Okay, 27 years. So I'm, by my calculation, tens of thousands of cases that you were involved and around during that time. Can you tell me, was there ever a time that the Department of Justice asked a court to overturn the guilty plea of a defendant who had pled guilty to charges that the Department of Justice had brought?
No, I've never seen anything like that, and I'm not the only one. I think after that happened with respect to Mike Flynn, there were, a couple of thousand prosecutors, former federal prosecutors, Democrats and Republicans, who signed a letter expressing the same thing.
So when you spoke last night, you talked about you started off by saying that our democracy is at stake, the rule of law, justice. And yeah, it is unusual that you would be speaking at a political convention, but that's where we are. What does Joe Biden need to do to restore the trust in our democracy and to get our systems back into order? Is he up for the task? And does anyone, do you think, really understand the magnitude of the task ahead for the next president of the United States?
Well, I think Joe Biden is absolutely up to the task. When I think about this election, to me, it all really comes down to who do you trust? Who do you trust to put the country first? Who do you trust to live up to our values? And who do you trust to tell us the truth? Joe Biden, has all of those things. And when people talk about, the decency and integrity that he has, that's absolutely the case. But let's not equate that to just being a nice guy. It's a lot more than that. He has got a moral compass about how he makes decisions that aspires to live up to the values that have really always defined us. And, you don't have to agree with someone on every single policy issue to trust that they are going to be making decisions that are in the best interest of our country, not his own personal interest, but best interest of our country, and try to live up to our values. And then the final thing, in terms of telling us the truth, that alone, to me, ought to be a deal breaker for our current president. We have to be able to trust that our president is speaking honestly with us. And we will be able to trust that every single day with Joe Biden.
Former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. And
Thanks
up
for having
next,
me.
One of the latest Democratic lawmakers to draw the ire of President Trump, Senator Cory Booker, is standing by. He joins the conversation next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.